From the moment she stepped into the quiet luxury of the penthouse suite, the young girl felt a strange shift in the air, one that carried both opportunity and danger. She had only come to drop off fresh towels for her mother, who worked tirelessly as a maid for families who never learned her name. But a single ringing phone abandoned on a marble table changed everything. When she answered it, out of instinct more than intention, she found herself entangled in a world far beyond what she had ever known. That brief moment, innocent yet fateful, set off a chain of events that would expose prejudices, challenge power, and force a millionaire to confront something he never expected. Before that day, her world had always existed on the edges of other people's lives, quiet, observant, and shaped by long hours spent waiting for her mother to finish work in the towering buildings, where wealth felt as common as the air they breathed. She was brilliant, curious, and far too aware of the subtle lines drawn between those who had everything and those who served them. Her mother often reminded that intelligence was her path out, but even brilliance could feel small in the shadow of power. The luxury hotel where her mother worked was a universe of its own. Polished marble floors, chandeliers that gleamed like trapped stars, and hallways filled with the muted footsteps of people who rarely stopped to see the workers who sustained their comfort. The girl had grown used to blending into those quiet corners, watching the rhythm of privilege move around her like a rehearsed ballet. On that afternoon, the suit assigned to her mother belonged to a man known for his influence, his wealth, and the rumors that followed him like a second shadow. He was the kind of person who made staff stand straighter, speak softly, and disappear quickly. The girl had seen him once or twice, always surrounded by an aura of authority that made people look away before meeting his eyes, while her mother scrubbed, folded, and organized with the precision of someone who dared not make mistakes. The girl wandered quietly near the seating area, absorbing the room's silent sophistication. That was when she noticed the phone, a sleek device left ringing on a table, as though waiting for someone bold enough to pick it up. The sound echoed through the room with growing urgency, and in the stillness, an instinctive pull urged her hand toward it. She had no idea that answering it would disrupt the fragile balance between her world and his, revealing truths neither was prepared to face. The moment her fingers brushed the phone, a subtle unease crawled up her spine, but the ringing felt too insistent to ignore. She lifted it hesitantly, expecting perhaps a misplaced guest or a simple inquiry. Instead, the voice on the other end spoke in Dutch, fast, urgent, and sharp enough to slice through her uncertainty. She didn't understand the words, but she recognized the tone, someone demanding answers. Instinct made her remain silent, and the caller continued, clearly believing they were speaking to the millionaire who owned the phone. When the call abruptly ended, she set the device down as though it had burned her. The silence that followed felt heavier than before. She tried to slip back into the quiet rhythm of the room, but the atmosphere had shifted. Her mother noticed first, the stiffness in her shoulders, the way her gaze kept drifting toward the door, as though expecting the owner to stride in at any moment. And fate complied. The door swung open moments later, revealing the man himself, stepping in with the kind of presence that made the entire suite feel smaller. There was no need for introductions. Everyone knew who he was, even without words. He paused when he saw her. His eyes narrowed, not in anger, but in calculation. She felt the weight of his gaze linger on the phone, then on her, as though piecing together an invisible puzzle. Her mother's posture stiffened, subconsciously shielding her daughter with her body, aware of how fragile their position was. Any misunderstanding here could cost her everything. Yet the girl's expression betrayed nothing. She had learned long ago how to mask fear behind composure. The man said nothing at first. He simply observed, moving through the suite with the controlled smoothness of someone accustomed to command. Something about the room felt off to him. He could sense it in the faint tension that clung to the air. And she, despite being young, felt a strange awareness settle over her as he was reading the space the way she read people. Slowly, methodically, searching for the disturbance. He glanced toward the phone. It hadn't rung again, but whatever message it carried had left a ripple in the atmosphere. He picked it up, checked the screen, and paused. The missed call notification glowed like a silent accusation. The girl watched his expression tighten slightly, the only outward sign that the call meant more than he cared to reveal. Her heart pounded as she wondered if he somehow knew the truth. To her surprise, he didn't speak. Not to her, not to her mother. Instead, he walked to the window, staring out at the city with a contemplative stillness that made him seem unreachable. She felt invisible, and yet strangely exposed, caught between two worlds that weren't meant to intersect. Her mother continued her work with meticulous focus, hoping the tension would dissolve on its own. But it didn't. The man kept glancing at the phone, then at the girl, as though sensing that a thread had been pulled, one capable of unraveling far more than a missed call. Something about her presence had disrupted the seamless order of his life, and something about the unanswered questions in his mind had begun to unravel hers. She didn't know yet that the call she answered had not only sparked his suspicion, but also ignited a chain of events that would force both of them into a confrontation with deeply buried truths. Truths shaped by status, power, and a world built on boundaries she was never meant to cross. The stillness in the suite deepened until it felt almost suffocating, as though the walls themselves were waiting for something to break. The millionaire remained by the window, the phone clenched lightly in his hand, absorbing the weight of the unanswered call. He wasn't a man easily rattled, yet there was something in the tone of that Dutch message. Urgent, coded, and unmistakably private, that tightened the air around him, and the girl, small yet unyielding in her quiet composure, had become the unexpected center of it. Her mother tried to keep her attention fixed on her work, but every movement, the tremble of someone bracing for the worst, she knew how fragile their place was in this world of polished marble and silent hierarchies. A single misstep could undo years of sacrifice, yet the tension in the room belonged to something larger than fear of consequences. It was the collision of power and truth, circling in silence. Then, as though pushed by an unseen force, the man finally turned toward them. His expression had shifted, less controlled, more unsettled. The phone's glow reflected faintly on his face, emphasizing the quiet storm behind his eyes. He wasn't angry. He was curious, cautious, and battling something internally that he didn't fully understand. And it was the girl, not her mother, who held his attention. She stood straighter under his gaze, not defiant but steady. For a moment, the distance between them felt like a lifetime of unspoken history, of people like her, unseen and underestimated, and people like him, shielded by a world built in their favor. The missed call had merely cracked the surface. Her presence, her calm intelligence, had shattered what remained. A shift occurred, not loud, not dramatic, but powerful enough to alter the trajectory of everything that followed. He lifted the phone once more, studied the call details, and then lifted his eyes to her with a realization that made the air thicken. Something about what had happened, something about her reaction, told him she understood more than he expected. Not the language, but the significance. And in that moment, an unspoken truth settled between them. The boundary that once separated their worlds had been crossed. Not by accident, but by fate. And whatever the call had triggered, it demanded answers from both sides of the divide. In the hours that followed, the tension woven into that moment evolved into something neither of them could ignore. The millionaire remained unusually quiet. Carrying the phone with him as if it held a truth, he was still debating whether to confront the girl, though uncertain of what she had stepped into, sensed that her presence had peeled back a layer of his world he had grown accustomed to overlooking. Her mother finished her tasks with hands that moved out of habit, but her thoughts drifted constantly toward her daughter, toward what this day might mean for her future. What lingered in the air was not fear alone, but the unmistakable weight of recognition. For the first time, the man looked beyond the uniform, beyond the assumptions, and saw the sharp, alert mind standing before him. She was not just a maid's daughter, momentarily caught in a storm too big for her. She was someone who carried potential as naturally as she carried her breath, and the contrast between her brilliance and her circumstance stirred something unexpected within him. As he reviewed the implications of the call, the urgency, the risk, the secrets implied between each missed message, he could no longer dismiss the truth staring back at him. The world he belonged to had been built on expectations that people like her would never enter its upper floors, except to clean them. Yet she had walked into the very center of it, and, with a single answered call, disrupted the order he took for granted. By the time the suit was spotless and ready for its next illusion of perfection, a quiet understanding had settled among them. Her mother gathered her belongings, preparing to return to the life that waited outside these polished walls. But the girl stepped out of the room, carrying something new. An awareness of her own power, of how easily a single moment could expose the thin lines separating privilege from possibility. Long after they left, he remained at the window, staring at the city below with the phone heavy in his hand. For the first time, he asked himself whether the world he helped maintain was as stable as it appeared, or whether voices like hers, rising from places long ignored, would one day redefine it completely. And as the city lights flickered against the night, one question hung in the air like a quiet challenge. How many hidden stories like hers go unnoticed, simply because no one thinks to look?